form, Michael Sidorich. Simon did not finish, for on the still air he had distinctly caught the music of the hunt with only 2 or 3 hounds giving tongue. He bent down his head and listened, shaking a warning finger at his master. "They are on the scent of the cubs," he whispered. "Straight to the Lyádov uplands." The count, forgetting to smooth out the smile on his face, looked into the distance, straight before him, down the narrow open space, holding the snuff-box in his hand but not taking any. After the cry of the hounds came the deep tones of the wolf call from Daniel's hunting horn. The pack joined the first 3 hounds and they could be heard in full cry, with that peculiar lift in the note that indicates that they are after a wolf. The whippers in no longer set on the hounds, but changed to the cry of uliuliu, and above the others rose Daniel's voice, now a deep bass, now piercingly shrill. His voice seemed to fill the whole wood and carried far beyond out into the open field. After listening a few moments in silence, the count and his attendant convinced themselves that the hounds had separated into 2 packs. The sound of the larger pack, eagerly giving tongue, began to die away in the distance. The other pack rushed by the wood past the count, and it was with this that Daniel's voice was heard calling uliuliu. The sounds of both packs mingled and broke apart again, but both were becoming more distant. Simon sighed and stooped to straighten the leash a young bourgeois had entangled. The count too sighed and noticed the snuff-box in his hand, opened it and took a pinch. "Back!" cried Simon to a bourgeois that was pushing forward out of the wood. The count started and dropped the snuff-box. Nastásya Ivánovna dismounted to pick it up. The count and Simon were looking at him. Then, unexpectedly, as often happens, the sound of the hunt suddenly approached, as if the sounds in full cry and Daniel uliuliuing were just in front of them. The count turned and saw on his right Mítka staring at him with eyes starting out of his head, raising his cap and pointing before him to the other side. "Look out!" he shouted in a voice plainly showing that he had long fretted to utter that word, and letting the bourgeois slip, he galloped toward the count. The count and Simon galloped out of the wood and saw on their left a wolf which, softly swaying from side to side, was coming at a quiet lope farther to the left to the very place where they were standing. The angry bourgeois whined and, getting free of the leash, rushed past the horse's feet at the wolf. The wolf paused, turned its heavy forehead toward the dogs awkwardly, like a man suffering from the quinsy, and, still slightly swaying from side to side, gave a couple of leaps and with a swish of its tail disappeared into the skirt of the wood. At the same instant, with a cry like a whale, first one hound, then another, and then another, sprang helter-skelter from the wood opposite, and the whole pack rushed across the field toward the very spot where the wolf had disappeared. The hazel bushes parted behind the hounds, and Daniel's chestnut horse appeared, dark with sweat. On its long back sat Daniel, hunched forward, capless, his disheveled gray hair hanging over his flushed, perspiring face. "Uliuliuliuliu! Uliuliu!" he cried. When he caught sight of the count, his eyes flashed lightning. "Blast you!" he shouted, holding up his whip threateningly at the count. "You've let the wolf go! What sportsman!" And as if scorning to say more to the frightened and shamefaced count, he lashed the heaving flanks of his sweating chestnut gelding with all the anger the count had aroused, and flew off after the hounds. The count, like a punished schoolboy, looked round, trying by a smile to win Simon's sympathy for his plight. But Simon was no longer there. He was galloping round by the bushes while the field was coming up on both sides, all trying to head the wolf, but it vanished into the wood before they could do so. End of chapter 4. Recording by Roger Moline.